Hi everyone, this is Bob. Welcome back to my channel. My channel is dedicated to motorcycling pursuits, maybe some fixing here and there, some upgrades, and some trips to enjoy the wonderful country of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Recently, you would have joined me on an epic journey of 3 episodes to fix a particular noise that I had when the bike was starting slightly erratically. Have a listen.
Here we go. Oh.
Yes, we do remember that, don't we? And you might also remember from the incredible footage that I posted a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago, not long really, of all of this in pieces all over the garage floor, and of how we had to remove the clutch and remove the primary and the primary tensioner unit and the compensator. Remember the troublesome compensator at the front? We swapped that out for a brand new Screaming Eagle unit. Probably $1,500 worth of expense just to do this piece. While all of this was off, you may have noticed as a part of the video me changing a $7 seal. Not 2 months later, it would appear that this $7 seal is not doing its job properly. And when I ride the wonderful Iceberg here, I find that it leaves a slight deposit of oil just sort of in and around and underneath the bike, and it slowly sort of creeps its way around the underside of my pristine 2007 Ultra Classic Electra Glide. And do you know what it takes to get this $7 seal changed? Because I think I have to do it again now. Is there a way to take the little gear shifter linkage off to get in behind the shaft that comes out and pop a new one on without removing all of this? No. I'm afraid that that's not the case. I will have to remove the footboards and remove the gear change assembly, the rear passenger footboards, possibly part of the exhaust pipe, the primary drive cover, the clutch assembly, the compensator assembly, let's not forget that, and then the inner primary unit will all have to come off because I need to replace a $7 seal on an inaccessible, unserviceable part of this Harley-Davidson big block V-twin motorcycle. As you can see, I'm really happy about this because it took me hours to do the previous one, and now it seems like the spare seal that I did buy on the same day as the one that's currently fitted to the bike, I now need to use sooner than I thought. I thought I'd never get to use this, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm going to invite you to join me on this next episode of changing the $7 seal from you know where, and that Harley-Davidson, whom I love, could not get their design act to be in a slightly better position when it comes to little things like this, or indeed a belt change, because that's hugely expensive and time consuming. But you know, I'm not a designer or work for Harley-Davidson. I'm just a home guy that wants to try and fix things like a $7 seal. I suppose we better get started. Right, one of the places, and hopefully you can see it, that I do tend to see where oil is along this pipe. That's the rear brake hydraulic pipe, and it's a bit hard to see, I think, on camera, I'm sorry. But I do see, like, you can maybe see it on my finger, like it's a bit wet, and it runs it. So I've put this sort of cover, this shroud over the clutch cable, but it's sometimes, you can sort of see it's a bit damp in there. You can sort of see it's slightly wet in there. As I come along, you can sort of see it's almost got this little bit of Sorry, that's a bit hard to sort of show you, but it was sort of getting wet in there. So I was thinking, well, maybe it's this gasket area. So as you can see, I did mark the cap screws once I put them back in and retorqued them, and all underneath them. You might not be able to see this too well. Oh, there we go. There's a couple there. And I was wondering, well, maybe it's this whole pan. And I thought, well, maybe it's this drain bolt here. Try and get it to zoom correctly. And maybe it's the actual drain nut, or the bolt there. But no, they're dry. And the same with the other one that's there. That one's dry. But it does look sort of damp in and around here. So, like I say, the phone's not really picking it up too well. I'm sorry. There we go. But I did go right under here. And again, it's a bit tricky to see because we're right under the bike. But that's the pulley, obviously the drive pulley. There we are. And in and around here, it has a slight appearance of it being, oh, this is terrible with the camera, I'm sorry, but I can see it with my eyes, so you have to take my word for it. And I'll go back above and we'll have a little look. Right, now I've got my headlamp on, so I look like a real ning-nong. I've got my headlamp trying to shine. If you can see just behind, this is the gear selector mechanism. If I move it, you can see, there we go. That comes out of the gearbox. And you can see a washer down there. And in behind that is a seal. But in front of that is, the washer is a retaining clip, a circlip. And so at the bottom of this piece here, you've got a splined shaft. And you've got, at the bottom of this piece, you've got the cap screw that sort of clamps onto that shaft. And the problem is, if you can see, if I can get a little bit closer, I'll just shine it by hand. There isn't the room to undo the cap screw and slide it off the spline. Now, the other thing is, if you remember from my video, I was able to take the top of this gearbox cover off, and with a bit of a movement of the actuator inside, push that shaft into the gearbox spacing, which then gave relief to pick out the O-ring and put the new one in. But like I say, on this piece down by the washer there's the washer. Just in front of that washer, there is a little circlip that is designed, obviously, to keep the shaft from wandering probably back into the gearbox, even though it's got this massive big thing on the end. And that's my issue, is if I could get that circlip off, undo this item, and then push the shaft through into the gearbox, I could probably change that without having to take all of this off again. I'm a bit disappointed because it's a brand new washer. And I know it's a tiny part, but the shaft was good. The inner housing was clean. I had slightly scraped it getting the old one out, but I sanded that. Well, not sanded it, but just, gently put a little bit of emery on there to smooth out the bore of that. Put it all back on. It's not like an active high pressure area. It's just the sloshing in the gearbox that causes it to sort of slightly come past it. But it is a bit disappointing because the volume of work required to change it for a tiny little part is ridiculous. I've got a spare one. Here it is. Bring it into the light. This is the washer. Part 101 and 101 and 101, part matrix. But look at that. $7. The other issue I've got, and I know this is not exactly stunning viewing, but the other issue I've got is in behind here, the inner primary, which sits in behind this cover. If you're just watching this for the first time, because you want to see how the gearbox shaft seal is done, it has 5 anchor point bolts and a rubberized sort of massive big washer that sits behind there to seal off this area because it's got oil all inside it. You're supposed to only use those once. Now, I don't think as a bolt they are completely redundant. This is one of those bolts. Now, I don't think that that's going to be broken or damaged if you were to use that again. And I've looked online and it does say you're supposed to use them once. There's 5 of these, and I think it might be probably because a little bit of the rubberized compound underneath the head just might be any good to use once. But I have a feeling that I might just use some RTV around that and use it again. In fact, it looks like that one may have been used again by someone else, actually, because I didn't do that. That was already on there. Anywho, as we work out what we're going to do, so I'm going to initially have a look at the whether there's the possibility of getting that little unit, that little arm off without taking everything off, but that circlip I think is going to be the absolute bind. So I'm going to do a little bit of mucking around and I'll let you know, and if the next bit of the video is the primary is all to pieces, you'll know that that's what we had to do. But I won't start doing that until I have sort of had a little look at it first, just because I think it's we'll take it step by step. Well, if only you could see how I'm having to lie to hold a mirror, a light and the phone. You wouldn't believe it. But that captures it well, and I think you can quite clearly see there from the area around the joint on the gear shaft that it's weeping near that area. And also from this piece of casting a little bit lower down or to the right of the gear shaft, a linkage piece of the clamp, you can see that that's wet as well. So not ideal, and something that we're going to have to get involved in fixing, but I don't think there's the clearance as you look to the shaft and then past that into the dark area. Certainly don't think that's got the room to get the shaft off and then manipulate the little clip off and everything, but that's what I'll have a little look at. This is a 1/4 inch Allen. There's a little bit of material on the magnet tip there. We'll have a little inspect once we get the side cover off. Took off the footboard. Best thing I ever got is this speed brace. This is a 3/16. Now, do I want to mark this? I think I might want to. Magnetic tray, very handy invention. I want to try and mark this as well, so we might just put a little, it just gets a bit stuck on here. There we are. I wonder if that's big enough. thing to note here with this coming off again is that in the last video of doing the compensator, we needed to epoxy this splash assister, as this end has a new way of distributing the oil, and that's beautifully still in position, clipped in, glued in hard, which is super. So I'm pleased with that. Look at that. What a great idea. I mean, it's absolutely factory shape as well, look. So it's been a couple of months since this was installed. This is a Screaming Eagle compensator set, which changes out the springs, the unit at the back, the stator cover, the ramps. I can see where they have been ramping with each other. You can see where there's been that slight back and forth, or however that works, because it's slightly more shiny, and I guess that's where some of the initial grey tinge to the oil has come from. But everything else looks good. The tension is still fine, even though that's self-ramping. I don't think that's particularly, and I'm hoping it's not any worse. I'll zip tie that and remove it, and then put wood in there to run the locker. What I want to make though actually is just a steel bar that will go between the two. That's more the recommended thing, as well as that block that I got. So I might just fabricate one of those up and use it as a metal brace. But everything else looks good. There's no sort of fragments or unusual wear, which is good to not see, or to see, whichever way you want to put that. Now I want to lift up a bit of chain. There we are. I love it how I say that a lot. Oh, there we go. That's what I wanted to do. And to the commenter just this morning, actually, from Germany, and forgive me, I can't remember your name, but you said you have the exact same bike with the exact same problem, and you'd watched the 3 videos about the compensator and then subsequently the starter motor. Hi. I was going to reply to, I did reply to you, but only short, with a short comment to say, well, I hope it goes well. But I was going to mention all of this, but then I thought, it's not a design terrible flaw, but this here, you can't get your socket onto it. You can only get your Allen key like this on. Right, so I've come back to it the next day. You can see how it's a bit wet around there. See, it's also a bit sort of sandy or gritty, so I need to clean all that. So I'm going to clean around this area. I had to take a few more pieces out because I want to take the lid of the gearbox off so I can push the shaft inwards, and then we can get the seal out really easily. So we're going to do that. So I'll get to some cleaning and then we can move to the next bit. Someone has the world's loudest lawnmower. This is the fork, or the little assembly that we want to lift up. See, already I can just see a slight little scratch, you know, and that's where it was slightly scratched beforehand, but nothing that you'd say is like really mega ruined. But I know it's a bit shadowy, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the lights a bit better, but it's getting dark outside. So this is to protect the splines, tearing the seal. But I'm going to put some RTV. This is the old one. I'm going to put some silicone around the edge of this. And I've sanded and emeryed, you know, back that little scrape, which I don't think was it, but we'll see. Here is my old, this is all hard at the top. And it's a little bit squishy down the bottom. So I'm just going to open up the bottom and probably use this for the last time. I only need a little bit. Just squeeze a bit out the end like this. I only need a little bit, I reckon. But I just want that outer edge to be no gaps. I'm trying to be conscious of the fact that I want you to see it. Now we will try. I want to just get it over that little, there we go. And just, I don't want to touch it, you see. I want to slip it over. There we have it. And when we get it to there, now I think last time I used a socket and just pushed it in. And it didn't take much at all. Hopefully that's, you know, filled any gaps or got into any crevices that it needs to. I was thinking of putting the second one back on, like stacking it, but the little shouldery lip that really is the part that would rub on the inside of this is, it wouldn't even make it that far. So, see, I just wonder, because that pushes back a bit. I think when I put those washers back on, I'm going to make sure that the washer that's up against here and then the circlip is really pulling. It's not able to push back in. Like if I can push that in a little bit to where it's got some drift past the edge of the seal. So it really needs to be right out so that it sits on that shoulder, but it's not. And that seems like I'm labouring this point, but I'm trying to just get across to you that there's the shoulder and the seal sits in behind it. But when it's got movement enough that with this washer on, I can see the little circlip line, but there's enough movement, and only a little bit, but there's enough movement that could go, well, not way in, but I just don't know. It looks like it could potentially go past the shoulder. I don't know, maybe not. But I am just wondering whether to bung this old one. When I say old, it's not old. It's a couple of months old, but the previous one on, I can see a little kink. Yeah, it's showing up. I can see a kink in the spring, unless that's from what I've just earlier done to try and get it off. But I could put that to the top. And if it doesn't work, I can just pick this one out. But I was just wondering whether to pop that one on to sort of like pack out. Right, I've got the circlip on and the washer and the two seals. The inner seal's the new one, obviously, because you saw that. And if I go back and forward, there's a lot less play coming out and going back in again. So hopefully this will be like permanently just giving a nice little sandwich seal inside this little housing, preventing the oil from seeping out. Well, that's the only thing I can hope for. Gearbox lid on. Gear selector back on. Inner primary. Starter back on. Exhaust bracket hanger. Starter motor bolts done up in there. Vent pipe back on. Clip back in. Pipe shroud had to come off. All the tape in and around taken off. Just to get the clearance to do things. That's what you need to do, really. Up to this stage.
go.